All right. We are live. So now I've completely lost my place in the show notes. Here we go. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Sammy K. Powers, and this is the PHP Roundtable. This is a live podcast of developers discussing topics that PHP nerds care about. And the ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn a little something from each other. If you're listening live and you want to be a little part of this shindig, I've been monitoring the Tweeter sphere over here. If you mention PHP Roundtable, it'll pop up on my screen here, and we'll try to get your snarky comment and or question addressed live on the air, if possible. Now, you may have remembered a little while back, I talked about like a really big announcement that was happening, like an announcement and then a really, really big announcement. Well, in the audio-only version, I've got the first big announcement, and then there's the really, really, really big epic announcement, like first time ever in any kind of PHP podcast ever announcement. That's happening. It's still in progress. It's a very long progress, but it will be happening, and new developments will be happening soon, hopefully, and I'll give you some more updates on that. So that should be very exciting. Laravel is possibly the best known web framework for its radness, rapid application development. There's a lot more going on in Laravel other than the well-known web framework like Lumen, Cashier, Spark, Forge, Envoy, Homestead, Ballet, Laracasts, Mix, Laracon. So many things. That's just a few of the keywords that you'll hear in the Laravel ecosystem, and not to mention the passionate and vibrant community that backs up everything. So today we chat with some of the contributors involved with the Laravel ecosystem to get a taste of what this vibrant community has to offer. And so without further ado, the panelists without any particular order, as always, we're going to start off with Adam Wathan, who is the author of Test-Driven Laravel and host of the Full Stack Radio podcast, which just had a brand new episode launched today. I saw on my phone. Welcome, Adam.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Absolutely. Thanks for coming. We also have Jeffrey Way, who's the owner of Laracasts, which you may have heard mentioned many times on previous podcasts because he's been a long-time supporter of the developer shoutouts for many, 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 many episodes. So thank you so much for your long-term support, Jeffrey, and welcome.
Hey, everybody.
We also have Taylor Otwell, who is the creator of Laravel. Welcome, Taylor.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we also have Dries Vints, the maintainer of Laravel.io. Hello, Dries.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And finally, we have Mohamed Said. He's web developer at Laravel. Welcome, Mohamed.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
For sure. That's a lot of people. Lots of people. There's lots more of, there's lots of other people behind the scenes of Laravel, the Laravel ecosystem. We could have had like 1,000 people on, but I wanted to have, some people who have been around for a while and then some new people. But I want to first ask Taylor. Taylor, a very, very profound and deep question. The name of the framework you built, what is it called?
I call it Laravel. I don't know what that rhymes with, but fair, I guess.
It's funny because I feel like a lot of times when I've heard you say it, you'll say Laravel, and maybe it's the accent, I don't know, but I'm like, I feel like you have a separate pronunciation than everybody else has.
He's always said Laravel, but people hear that and they keep saying Laravel. They will know the official pronunciation is Laravel, and they will continue saying Laravel.
Yeah, it rhymes with pair, like pair programming, Laravel.
Nice.
Well, I don't even know if that even...
I think Taylor and Jeffrey even said it a little bit differently there.
Laravel. All right, you say it, Taylor.
Laravel.
Okay, come on. Laravel.
I think the emphasis is on the vel. Like a lot of people will say like Laravel, but I think Taylor says Laravel. Laravel.
I've also seen
very subtle, very subtle.
I've also seen like 10 different ways people write it, like Laravel. Yeah, a lot of different ways you can write it as well.
The most common pronunciation here is Laravel.
Laravel.
Yes.
Nice. Maybe I should just start saying it like that. Laravel. That's cool. So for somebody who's brand new to this whole Laravel scene, Taylor, can you give a quick overview of kind of the mission and what you can expect as a new Laravel onboarding person?
Yeah, so Laravel is a full-featured, full-stack framework for PHP that has pretty much most things you would need to build a modern web application. So, of course, you have routing, which is the routing syntax is pretty inspired by Sinatra. So it's going to feel similar to like Slim or Silex in terms of like your routes file, where you have a URI and then either like an anonymous function or a controller that you're sending things to. It has an ORM called Eloquent, which is inspired by Active Records, or not Active Records, but Rails ORM Active Record. And it has really good unit testing stuff. It has a queue library. It has support for like real-time WebSocket stuff. Lots of cool stuff, really, for the modern web. And then it also has some front-end tooling, which is Laravel Mix, which is what Jeffrey built, which makes working with Webpack a lot easier unless you have a really sort of sane syntax for saying, I just want to compile some Sass and JavaScript into, browser ready Sass or CSS and JavaScript or less or whatever you want. But like you said, it is sort of geared to be rapid in the sense that the syntax is usually really simple and hopefully intuitive. And also we strive to have really good documentation, which I think helps with the whole rapid thing as well. So if you can learn it quickly, you can build things quickly.
True. And if somebody's brand new to this whole thing, where would you recommend the best place to kind of get started to wrap your head around all that?
Well, Jeffrey has good videos on Laracast. He has a lot of free videos actually on Laracast that you can get started without having a subscription. Also, I think one thing that's really helpful is just to read the documentation from beginning to end, which I don't know, it might take you like a whole afternoon or whatever, but you will learn a lot, I think, and have a pretty good grasp of how everything works. And I think that's kind of neglected. Like a lot of people just sort of use it as a reference manual, which is fine. They just kind of skip to exactly what they need at the moment. But I think if you read it more as like a book, just from beginning to end, that's pretty helpful as well.
Yeah, and especially if you haven't read the documentation in a few years, like it's been updated so many times over. So a couple months ago, even, I started reading through it again, and I learned tons of stuff. And I run a business dedicated to teaching it, and I still learned so much. Like the little things that get introduced to the framework that you never hear about, or you just didn't see the GitHub PR. And then all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that you could fetch the count of a relationship on an Eloquent query. Those things can kind of slip by. So refresh on the documentation at least once a year, I think, is a really good recommendation.
True that. Well, speaking of trying to keep up with the PRs and everything, I'm curious, Taylor, when you have so many open source projects, I mean, there's a ton under the Laravel hood. How do you even keep up with all that? And for other open source maintainers, do you have any kind of quick tips to help maintain the ridiculous amount of floodgate PRs that you get all the time?
Yeah, well, my situation is probably a little unfair compared to others since I work on Laravel full time. But what I do is just every morning I have a GitHub page that has every pull request across every Laravel repository just sort of aggregated on one page. And that way I can just see everything across the whole organization, and I'll try to get it down. Lately it's been under 10, but usually I try to keep it under about 15 or so open at any given time. And some take longer than others, and sit out there for a month or more if they're pretty complicated. But yeah, just since I work on it full time, I can devote, an hour or two every morning to it while I'm fresh and stay on top of it. But if I don't check it for like a few days, it will really get out of control fast. Like even if I were to even go like 1 week without checking it, there would probably be like 100 PRs. So it's just something I have to put in like an hour a day. It's just part of my routine to stay on top of it.
So just before we move on to kind of a couple of other things, I have one more question for you, Taylor, that I'm curious, as somebody who has been trying to contribute more to PHP, the PHP source, as of all the things that you try to implement in the framework, has there ever been something that you've run into that you have been limited by PHP itself?
Yeah, probably the two things that most come to mind are like an actual thread type thing, which I used to use in .NET quite a bit, where I could just put something on a background thread and have it run in the background. And I know there's like a pthreads extension, but it's not super common to like have that available, I feel like. The other thing I feel like I run into a lot is, say I have like an object that's also sort of like an iterator aggregate, like a collection that I can do a for each over or whatever, a collection object. I can't really pass that into like array map or array filter, even though it's, iterable. I can't use array map on like a collection object. I actually have to like cast it down to an array first. That happens quite a bit, I feel like, where I'm passing a collection around and then I want to run some array function over it. So we sort of duplicate a lot of those methods on the collection because of that reason.
So if array map supported the new iterable pseudo type, maybe that could fix it.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. If it had support for other iterable objects.
True that. So Laravel has been expanding quite a bit. In fact, so much that you've actually hired employee number 1, right? And
yeah. I don't know how long. I don't even know how long Mohamed's been working with us, but it's been probably like 6 months.
Nice. Well, Mohamed, what's a typical day in the life of Laravel employee number 1?
Well, I usually start the day looking at the issues on the different repositories. Like I try to fix what can be fixed easily, and I try to see if there is like suggested features or proposals or so on. Try to filter the different issues on the different GitHub repositories. Like when I first started working at Laravel, or before that, I was like trying to get involved within the community and try to look at the issues and the pull requests. And once I started to work, like there was like tons of easy issues on the GitHub repositories that I could fix, and I could create lots of pull requests and propose lots of fixes. But I think that those days are gone, and the easy stuff are already fixed, and all the stuff that are currently existing in the different repositories like need a lot of discussions and a lot of back and forth between the different developers facing the same problem. So like that takes like most of the day or most of the beginning of the day. And after that, sometimes Taylor, while reviewing the pull requests, he has like some stuff that he would like me to look into or to review, test if it works on different like environments, and if the changes proposed are not breaking. So when Taylor like reaches out for me and asks me to review some pull requests, I usually do that like in the beginning of the day after looking or during looking into the issues. And after like going through all the repositories, I start looking at the tasks, the actual tasks that we have on Trello, like things that I should work on in Forge or in Boyer or Spark. Pretty much like all the projects that Laravel maintain. Sometimes like Taylor like asks me to look into some stuff like new services that we can implement, or new approaches that he would like me to look into and see if we can use it in one of our projects or so. So like sometimes this happens, and I have to study what is being proposed or what is being introduced, try to find if it's useful for us or not. And lately I've been studying Horizon. I'm not going to talk about Horizon in specific, but like it's really useful package that Laravel is going to introduce soon. And I've been studying it and learning a lot, and it took a lot of time because it's like it feels very advanced, and the stuff in there I'm pretty much new to this stuff, so it takes some time from me. And after that, like I have usually every day an hour or two where I can experiment some of the stuff, new features I have in mind that I want to introduce in any of the projects, or new package ideas, or check on the Laracasts forum and see if people commonly ask for specific questions that I can take and write a tutorial about in my blog or on Laravel News. And that's pretty much how I work, or my typical work day looks like.
Great. So you have push access to the Laravel repos, right?
Yes, most of them.
So have you ever been tempted to sneak in your own little Easter egg or little feature that's not been gone, that you don't go through the official process, and you're just like, oh, this is a Mohamed Easter egg right here?
In the public repositories, like I have to open a pull request, but sometimes in Forge, like I do some stuff without pull request, like just commit it. But I've been lately asked by Taylor not to do that and just to open it.
Good call. Good call. Well, kind of switching gears a little bit, I have some questions. Adam, you have recently found quite a bit of success online doing your own thing. I'm curious. I know Laravel has kind of played a role in that. At least the ecosystem has to some degree. What kind of influence has Laravel had on your success recently online?
I think I just kind of am lucky to be involved in a pretty big community of people that are passionate about what they're doing and excited to learn new things. So, being able to share lots of stuff that I know and, blog and tweet stuff and build kind of an audience of people that are interested in, picking up on tips and stuff has made it easy for me to, have a big audience of people that are interested in the things that I'm working on. So I'm definitely grateful that Laravel has such a huge community of people who are passionate about what they do. And it's awesome that I've been able to, make a living now trying to help people get better at what they're doing with the framework and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been really good.
Have there been any specific tools that you've found exceptionally helpful in your when you launch new products and things like that?
Probably the most critical tool that I use is ConvertKit, which is an email marketing automation tool. It just makes it really easy to collect email addresses from people who are interested in, something that you've announced that you're working on, and keep them updated and stuff. And also makes it easy to only email someone who bought this version of my book or this version of my book, or only email people who haven't bought it yet, or only email people who have bought any version yet. Just makes it really easy to communicate with people who are interested in what I'm working on.
Very cool. And so you recently had or I guess maybe it was your first publication about refactoring to collections and kind of rethinking about how we think of loops and things like that.
Yeah.
How much of that that thought process? Where did you get those ideas about higher order functions and all the things that you talk about in that publication?
I think it just kind of started when I started discovering some of the more functional functions built into PHP, like array map and stuff like that. And when I started to realize what they did and what problems they solved, it made me start noticing all these patterns and duplicated code all over the place. Like, oh, I always do this thing where I create a results variable that's an empty array and then loop over something else and stuff it into the new array and then return it. It just kind of opened my eyes to being able to see different ways to create abstractions around patterns that I never would have noticed as patterns before, and being able to leverage, closures and higher order functions to do that sort of thing. So that started becoming really interesting to me when I realized, that a lot of these things I was repeating over and over again actually had names and had existed in programming for years and years and years in other languages. So I kind of thought it would be fun to try and push it to its extreme and learn everything I could about it. And I was really happy with the results, and people started kind of asking me questions about it, like, hey, how could you do that with this piece of code? And it was really fun getting involved in all that stuff. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll put something together that kind of distills everything I've learned about it into one resource that people can kind of work through and hopefully learn some interesting things from.
I find it really interesting how when some of you guys, as thought leaders, you all who have contributed to so much of the community, if you're nerding out on a particular thing, like the higher order function thing, I feel like that really significantly influences the overall developer community, but also the actual framework itself. And I saw recently there was a commit, I think it was by Taylor, the higher order tap. What is tap, and what is the higher order tap commit that I just saw?
Whoa.
Uh-oh, I think we're missing Taylor's audio here.
It's super
quiet.
His damn mic never works. Get your stuff together, Taylor. Jeez.
Is it getting any louder?
No.
Now what do I sound like?
Now you sound
echoey, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
It's all good though.
Soft again?
Yep.
And it's gone.
Okay, I guess I'll use my cheap iMac mic. Anyway, higher order tap, or tap for one, is, you know what? Okay, I'll address this after. But tap is the greatest function probably introduced into PHP in the last 5 years. Once you see it, you can't really unsee it. Like it changes your whole life. But basically what it is you call tap and you give it like any object, and the second parameter is a closure, an anonymous function. It passes that object to the closure where you can do anything with it, and then tap returns the object that you gave it. So it's a little hard for me to describe in words. I feel like it's better if you can kind of see it, but like, what would be a good example? It makes it easier to like chain things. So I would say return tap the object closure, and then I would do something on the object that would not normally like return the object itself. And I feel like I'm muddying it up, but
I think the main use case
what's a good example
is when you have, there's so many situations where you do some operation and assign it to a variable just so you can do something else with that variable, and then you return that variable. Like say you had like user equals user find by username, whatever, and then you do like user is admin equals true, user save, then return that user or something. You know what I mean? Like you see this pattern a lot of time where you get something, you do some work with it, and then you return it, and you have to assign it to a variable just to do that. So tap kind of lets you say, here's the thing that I want to return, but before you go ahead and return it, give me this cute little block where I could play with it a little bit and in this nice tucked away kind of tidy way.
Yeah, I feel like I could probably like share my screen and do it and show you, but just a second. Okay, so if you look at my screen, you can see like, in theory, let's pretend like some stuff happened here, and you have some user variable that's like a model or whatever. Tap lets you say, like pretend touch does not normally return user, it returns like void or just nothing or null or whatever. Tap lets me just say return tap user and then call touch, and then this will also return whatever I gave it. So it's just like a convenient way to sort of chain things around. So now what higher order tap does, it was kind of inconvenient to have this whole closure just to return the user. Tap lets me say, or higher order tap lets me do this, where I can tap the user and then call any method, and then it will return the user. So I can kind of hijack into libraries that I don't really own and make them return this when they don't normally. So it's stuff that people are going to make fun of me about on Reddit, but they secretly love it and they wish they could use it. Anyway, nice. That's tap in a nutshell. We actually got it from Ruby, where it's not really a Ruby function, right, Adam? It's more of a Rails function.
It was originally in Rails in active support, and then they added it to every object in Ruby. It's even nicer in Ruby because you can just say like return user.tap, and it takes a callback that accepts it instead of just like a global function. But yeah, so we got it from Ruby and sort of brought it into PHP, and I promise like it probably sounds really stupid like when I'm explaining it, but once you start using it, it's hard to stop using it. Anyway, just try it. You'll see what I mean.
I can see how it could definitely clean up the API. If I have a user model and I use the save method, which doesn't actually return the user model, I just wrap a tap and do save, and it magically returns the user.
Yeah, exactly. Start playing with it. You'll like it.
Now, is that on the there's a tap on the Eloquent model and there's a tap helper function, right?
Well, that was the sort of debate we had, because with higher order tap, I almost put a tap on the Eloquent model. And Adam was like, you should just make tap take an object and then have like a dynamic call, which is more stuff people are going to make fun of, but whatever. Have a dynamic underscore call that tap returns, and then I can just call any method and it will return itself. But no, there's not a tap meta on the Eloquent model. It's more of just a global function.
Gotcha. Well, since we're talking about Laravel features, one of the new features has something to do with the way that migrations are run, right? Because of some ideological views on doing down migrations. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is sort of a recent change where I'd had a few discussions with people. It wasn't even really my idea, but a few people had mentioned to me that they felt like down was sort of pointless, like in a production situation. Like, of course, you use down all the time when you're doing development. But once you deploy to production, it's a little dangerous to use down, because if you add a new column and maybe customers have already put data in that column, you can't really just roll back the column and lose your customer's data or whatever. So what they had been doing is just anytime they had a mess up or whatever in a migration, they would just write a new migration with a new up method that fixes whatever the problem was. Instead of going back down, they would just always go forward, so to speak, even if they had to fix a problem. And so in order to sort of accommodate that workflow, we wanted to make the down method just entirely optional. But in order to do that, we needed a new command that instead of calling down on all your migrations, would just drop all the tables in the database sort of in like one operation. So we added that in Laravel 5.5, and Freak, I guess is how you pronounce his name, was sort of the original author of that. But there's a new db fresh command which drops all your tables and will rerun all your migrations, so you don't have to write any down methods. Which saves you some time. If you subscribe to that philosophy, which is of course kind of an optional thing, you can always still write your down methods. But in 5.5, they're optional.
Cool. Well, one other feature I would like to talk about on Laravel before kind of moving on to a few other things. The last episode we talked about dependency injection with a lot of dependency injection maintainers. Like they have packages about dependency injection that handle dependency injection in different ways, and the idea of this sort of auto injection or auto resolving dependencies using reflection came up, and although there are packages out there that do that, Laravel kind of becomes baked in with this auto resolving dependencies thing, and it definitely has mixed feelings from people on like whether or not that's the correct way or whatever.
Shocker.
Shocker.
To me, that's the only way. Like you would ever even. I don't know why you would write a dependency injection container any other way.
Well, I admitted on that episode too that that like I'm so used to that because I have done many projects in Laravel, but I don't always do them in Laravel for maybe legacy applications. I'm using Nikita Popov's fast route, and then I've got like Pimple for the dependency injection. And I realized that in that moment, I kind of write my own little reflection class and or like my little implementation of reflection and like resolve the dependencies for me automatically. But there are issues with it being kind of slow. How does Laravel deal with the kind of slow part of the reflection API?
Usually it's just like you're not resolving enough dependencies on a request, any given single request, for it to actually matter in terms of performance. Like, I mean, compared to like a database hit or something. So like if you had your controller, maybe it only has 3 or 4 dependencies, at most. And so you're not doing that much. It's not like you're reflecting into 10,000 objects, on every request. So it hasn't really been. I haven't seen it, where it's been a real problem, like a real application where like, hey, reflection is killing our application. So we haven't really done anything special to try to mitigate it, because it just hasn't really come up, I guess. Probably just because we're just not reflecting enough for it to matter. But yeah, I mean, that's my favorite way to use the container. And when I first wrote, my first open source package was a reflection-based dependency injection container back in 2010 it was just really generic PHP, but mainly for the CodeIgniter community. And that was the only way I knew that. I had never seen a dependency injection container any other way. So like in .NET or whatever, that's the only way they work, is through reflection. So that's how I naturally wrote it in PHP. And I think you get so many benefits when you write them that way. So I really enjoyed it.
And then it's baked into Laravel.
Yeah. The container is basically about the same as it always has been since 2010.
Have you found a good way to decouple the routing with the container? Because I feel like every time I write my own implementation, they just get so tightly coupled.
Like if you want to inject your dependencies into your controllers or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of coupled at that point. I don't know. Yeah. Laravel, we prefer to call it integrated. Not so much coupled. It's perfectly integrated and cohesive and sort of one nice package.
That's great. I'm going to say that for everything that I tightly couple. I'm like, these are finely integrated.
Yeah, it's like me and Adam talk about this, but if there's an application that's like Mac only, it's not really like a limitation. It's exclusively for Mac. Like it's more of you just have to look at it as a benefit.
Right. So if you're kind of learning all this, or you're new to Laravel, we mentioned earlier that a great place to start is obviously reading the documentation, but there's this great resource called Laracasts. And if you've listened to PHP Roundtable for any number of episodes, Laracast has been the developer shoutout sponsor for many episodes. So you know full well what Laracast is all about, but it's about Netflix for developers, kind of, right? And Jeffrey Way creates loads of awesome screencasts to teach you step by step how to do awesome things. So Jeffrey, what are some of the things that you've been working on now, and what can we expect to see kind of soon?
Right now, I've been focusing a lot on. Well, usually I do like 2 different series at a time. I know a lot of sites will like release a full course at once, but the problem is especially for these smaller businesses, you just can't crank it out that fast. So it's much easier if you release as you go. So like I'll do 2 videos in one day and then I'll release that, versus like, hey, there's nothing on the site for a month, but then I'll slam 50 episodes in your face that are too overwhelming and nobody watches them. So I feel like if you kind of bring it in 1 or 2 at a time, people are much more likely to watch, and they kind of get into a habit of like, oh, once a day I watch one of these videos, rather than like, oh, great, 60 videos that I'm not going to make my way through. So right now I've been working on so much of my life has been dedicated to Mix and Webpack lately. Really, like I didn't know much about Webpack at all a year ago. So we even kind of teased it, because like we had this joke that nobody even knew what Webpack was. Like, what does it do? Is it a module bundler? Does it compile SAS? Like, what does it do? And it ends up doing a lot of things. So I did a full course that's free to everyone. Actually, you know what? You can go to webpackcast.com. Sometimes I purchase domain names. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm working on. I'm working on kind of a group series where we build a form from scratch, which turns out form ends up being like a really good exercise for people wanting to flex their muscles a little bit, especially newcomers to intermediate developers. You built your blog, you built your personal site. And I think so often people fall into this trap of like, I want to learn and I want to practice, but I have no idea what to build. A form, it's nothing glamorous. It's kind of like the to-do app for PHP. But when you think about it, it gives you a ton of things to practice with. So you have threads, you have replies, but you also require authentication for that. You also require validation. You also require authorization to see, does this person have permission to delete the reply? So like, yes, the person who creates the reply can delete it, but maybe the administrator can delete it as well. Or maybe some random person that you've given administrative privileges can do it. Maybe you want to receive an email every time somebody replies to a thread. Maybe you want a section on the site where you subscribe to certain threads so that when they get updated, they jump to a separate list. So there ends up being a lot of cool things you can learn from building something as basic as a forum. I'm working on that. And then after that, I really want to tackle like a really good database design course. It's probably been, weirdly enough, it's like the #1 requested thing for the last year. And I think once again, it's because people dive in, they want to learn everything, they get excited, they learn the framework, then they dig deeper and they want to learn like lower level stuff. They buy the blue book, they buy the red book, they start learning about DDD. And then I think what you find is so often people very much skip over like the fundamentals of database design. Maybe they learned how to do it with Active Record or Doctrine, but they never really learned about it. At least this has been my experience from working with a lot of people. So that's what I'm going to be tackling next, and we'll go from there. I'm not sure. I don't plan things a year at a time. Maybe some businesses do, but I just don't have the energy. So much of it is just based on what I'm currently interested in or what is most requested. So I kind of play it by ear.
That's great. And I love that you're doing your own thing. You've got a SaaS out there that is just fantastic, that everybody just absolutely loves. And I've been inspired to try to do the same thing on my own kind of screencast things for maybe like Facebook integrations or something like that. Do you have any advice for those who are kind of in the back of their minds thinking like, I wanted to do a screencast, offer this as a service type of thing? Any quick tips that you've learned along the way?
For creating your own screencasting business, I'm not sure I want to share this information. No, I'm kidding.
Or just don't do it.
Actually, you know what? My biggest piece of advice would be like, no, totally do it, but you have to do it every single day. So many people will launch similar products and they just don't update it. A month will go by or 3 weeks will go by. And it's like, if you're in the content business, like one of the most important things is you just need a steady stream of content. And if you even like this, Laracast launched in 2013. I've never gone even 3 or 4 days without new content up on the site. Wow. And if I do go that long, it's because of a vacation or a weekend, a long weekend. So most people don't do that. They will wait 2 weeks for new content, and then people just move on to the next thing. So for Laracast, one of my secrets has always been have people asking themselves, what's new on Laracast today? I even made that like a catchphrase in the early days, like what's new on Laracast today? In terms of the SaaS part, I probably took the long way. I just did it all from scratch. I feel like there should be some kind of education SaaS as a service, and I guarantee there is one. But I don't know, from my experiences, so often when you try to integrate with those services, they're never quite what you need. So you end up having to like wrangle them to do what you want. I don't know. I think it's probably easier to just do it yourself so often. The same is true, I would say, for like sometimes pulling in third-party packages. Like if you want Teams or some kind of subscription things, I would say like make sure you can trust the person's package and the person whose package you're pulling in, because otherwise you may pull it in and the person abandons it 6 months later, and you're in a huge world of hurt because you've integrated with this thing, but now it doesn't work anymore, or they haven't kept it updated. So that's why I really love some of the Laravel first-party packages, because you have basically a guarantee that those will always stay current, and it's not a situation where Taylor's just going to grow bored and never update them again. So that's kind of an aside, but yeah.
Well, since it's your own thing, you're constantly giving your love and affection to this thing, and you can tell because you've massaged the front end, you've massaged the back end. It seems like you're just in a constant refactoring mode with the site, in a good way, right? Like you're just constantly making it better and better.
Some would say in a bad way, but go on.
No. I think every time you massage it, I'm like, oh man, this is better than before. So I'm just curious though, when Laravel upgrades, or when there's a new version that's released, what is your typical upgrade path when you take your site to the next Laravel version?
So this is an interesting thing, because I think my upgrade path for Laracast is probably going to be different than most businesses. When Laravel does get an incremental release like 5.3 to 5.4, I do feel more compelled to update. Whereas if I did a different business, like you do want to update from time to time, but I think you'll find that most people are probably still on 5.2 or 5.1, and they only do these big updates pretty rarely, honestly. But with Laracast, it's a very different thing, because like part of my job is educating people about Laravel. So often I'll be doing videos about certain features like mailables in Laravel. But then in the Laracast code base itself, I can't do that. And then I get screwed up because I'm so used to talking about that, but I can't do it in my own code base. So I'm a little more religious about keeping Laracast up to date. I feel like it's just a smart idea anyways. Why wouldn't you want to be on the latest and best version of the framework? But specifically because I teach Laravel, I feel it's even more important for Laracast to be running a current version of the framework. But I would never expect most businesses to do it. They can decide for themselves.
Right.
I think some people might even consider it like an anti-pattern to upgrade so quickly. I'm not sure I would go that far, but nonetheless, depends on the company.
Speaking of the latest and greatest version, Marcel Pokiat on Twitter just screenshotted one of the headers from the phproundtable.com and said, on the funny side, PHP Roundtable is running the exclusive PHP version of PHP 6.0.0 Alpha 1, which is my little troll header I left in there. And I think you're the first one, Marcel, to point out that header that I left in there quite a while ago when we were talking about actually, I think it was the PHP 6, what happened to PHP 6 episode a couple episodes back. So I have a couple of little troll headers in there. Jilson Thomas chimed in on Twitter. Can you ask Taylor why 5.5 and not 6 for the version number of Laravel? The next version, I guess.
Usually Laravel has a little bit of a different versioning scheme, which I recently added to the documentation. But we use the first number for more like paradigm shifting releases. So right now there is no Laravel 6 like planned per se, because the Laravel 5 like architecture and structure has been working out pretty well, and there's just not a big need to sort of change everything like that. And so, but for our minor releases, or like the second number in the version, we do make just sort of like minor breaking changes on the releases to sort of make progress. And usually my guideline there is I try to keep the upgrade time to be under 1 day. So sometimes the main reason that I feel like that gets extended for people is because if they're using packages that are not updated or like maintained very well, then they kind of get stuck in this spot. But as far as the framework itself goes, I try to keep it under 1 day. So that's why from 5.4 to 5.5, it's not really a paradigm shifting change. In fact, it's probably one of the more smaller releases in a little while, maybe even smaller than the 5.4 release, just because I'm trying to kind of stable things out a little bit, make the upgrades easy. And most of my work lately has been going into sort of packages that are, you sort of add on to the framework, so they don't really, they're not really in the core of the framework itself.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, Dries, we haven't actually heard from you in a while. So you're the maintainer of Laravel.io, and so what is Laravel.io, and how'd you get involved with that?
Well, Laravel.io, I think it started out in 2013, and Sean McCool was the original person who created it. He's also one of the co-hosts of Laracon.eu. And Laravel.io is actually a community project, so it means it's open source. It's on GitHub. Everyone can read source code and contribute. And the main function of the portal website is actually to have a discussion forum and to have articles which people can contribute. The article function actually got cut in the latest version, which is currently online. And ever since I took over the project in 2014, it was, I believe, I've been working sporadically on the next version and maintaining the current one. And my main goal for Laravel.io is, and will always be, to let it be a project by the community and for the community. So it means that the source code will stay open source, and it will be a project where people can contribute to, can work on to discuss on new features they want to implement, and especially learn from the source code and from other people's contributions. So I'm currently working on the next version. It's almost done, actually. I think I'm going to start sending private betas to some people to have a quick first look at some opinions of people I'm closely familiar with. And then I think the next version will probably come online in, let's say, a month or a month and a half or something like that. And at first, it's just going to be a rewrite of the current platform. So you'll have the discussion forums as well, but with a new UI. And it will be a starting point from where other people can contribute on GitHub photo features they'd like to have added and stuff like that. The reason why I decided to have a complete rewrite is because Sean and other people who worked on the platform did a great job, but they tried a lot of different design patterns and stuff like that in the old source code. So it was a little bit hard for me to work on that, and I just decided to rewrite from scratch and took a totally different approach with the form. And it took actually a while for me to get to this point, because I took over the project in 2014. So I've only been able to work on it sporadically because I still work on a daytime job and only have a little bit of time during the evenings and weekends to work on it. But it's actually coming together quite nicely. I dropped a lot of functionality I wanted to add first because you can go on and on if you'd like with a platform like this. But I think the current thing I've built is a good starting point for the community to come at it and help contribute to the platform and build something that's really a place where they can see how a full-scale Laravel application is built together. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Sean McCool. I haven't. he used to be pretty involved in the Laravel community. I know at the time he was really nerding out on CQRS and all that kind of stuff. Is that what the troubling stuff was in the code base that you were dealing with?
Well, yeah, they tried a lot of different design patterns and approaches to handle stuff. I wouldn't say it was a total mess, because it was still well developed, but it wasn't really the way I saw how I would approach to build a platform, and I just decided to vastly simplify things. Over the past 3 years, I also tried a lot of different approaches. I rolled back a lot of my decisions initially, because I was working much more with like interfaces and repositories and back then. But ever since like in the last half year, I cut a lot of the code out, because in the end, I just decided that a lot of the stuff I was doing for this kind of project was totally overkill and was definitely not needed for this. So the code I now came up with is vastly more simpler. I think I threw away like 50% of the original source code, so to speak.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe what happens is those projects get used as like a playground to try out new ideas, and maybe that's what happened in that particular case. So it's great to hear that you're rewriting it, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's actually I'm pretty excited that it's finally approaching a working version to be put online, and it's actually nice to see as well, because I've been working in a company for 2 years called BeatSwitch, and I've been working with doctoring mostly for the last 3 years, so I was kind of unfamiliar yet with Eloquent for the last couple of years. So I dove back into Eloquent in the last 6 months more, and it came to me that that Eloquent is really totally different than doctoring, and can be vastly more simpler than doctrine in terms to speak of rapid application development or simplified approaches to things, and that's really showing in the current code base of the Laravel Toyo. And I really can't wait to show everyone what it became and to work on that product. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we're getting about that time where we need to start wrapping up, unfortunately, but we have a ton more stuff we haven't even mentioned within the Laravel ecosystem. So I want to just blow through this real quick. For DevOps, you got Homestead, which is like a Vagrant box. You have Valet, which used to be built on the built-in web server from the PHP CLL, right? But now it's Nginx.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Is there anything for Docker in the works or out there?
So right now, the most popular Docker solution I see is the Laradoc project. It's not really an official project in the sense that I don't maintain it, but it's definitely a legitimate product in the sense that, you know, that has lots of active people and has lots of things it supports, like Mongo and all kinds of databases, Postgres, MySQL. So check that out if you're interested in Docker. And then, of course, I think some people just sort of roll their own Docker files, which seems to be fairly common.
True that. There's also a SaaS framework, Spark. We talked about that one actually at the quite a few episodes back at the Laracon that it was released on. Just kind of, so that's still a thing, right?
Yeah, that's still a thing. I just released a new version today. A new
Awesome.
like a maintenance release.
Beautiful. And then of course we talked about Laravel Web Framework and Lumen, which is the micro framework version, a mini version of that. And then there's a bunch of official packages, Cashier to help with subscription and billing under Stripe and Braintree. There's Envoy, which is the remote task runner. Basically, you just send it. You can basically SSH to a box and then send it remote commands, right?
Yeah, I use that quite a bit for just running little remote tasks.
Cool. Passport, which offers API authentication. It's basically OAuth 2 implementation out of the box, like a OAuth 2 client or OAuth 2 server.
Yeah, we use the PHP Leagues OAuth 2 server as a base, and then put a whole lot of sort of convenience on top of that and bake it into Laravel to make it really easy to get started.
Nice. And then Scout, which is full text search for eloquent models, which is kind of crazy. So basically, you just have a bunch of varchars and it full text searches over those.
Well, it's driver based. So the main driver we ship is Algolia, which is a hosted search. I don't know what their search backend is written in. And then people have written other drivers. Like there is a MySQL driver. I don't use it really, but there are community drivers for Elasticsearch and other things like that.
Cool. And then one other official package, Socialite, which is that how you say it? Socialite?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Socialite was basically social media and authentication. So basically OAuth 2 and OAuth 1 client, right?
Yeah, for the most popular providers like GitHub and Facebook and Twitter and Bitbucket maybe. But anyway, sort of like the big ones you would use on a project.
Nice. So kind of wrapping this up, is there anything, a little sneak peek that you can give us about something that you haven't officially announced but might give like a blurry, vague description of?
Gosh, I feel like the things we've been working on lately are so ambitious, really, and I hopefully I can get some of them done. I mean, Horizon will come out at Laracon. There will definitely be a demo of Horizon. I think it's going to be something people really like. See, and then the thing after Horizon is so ambitious. I don't even want to jinx myself, but hopefully, maybe there will be a preview of it this year, but probably more likely like 2018.
Cool. That sounds good. Very ambitious. Well, it's very inspiring to see all of you push for something and get your own projects out there. And it's like for even PHP Roundtable, like this is my little baby that I was able to push out mainly due to seeing people like you do your thing and being like, oh man, I want to do that too. So I really appreciate your all's consistency and the way that you keep pushing and helping others too. Like Adam, you just recently posted a blog post about very specific details about how you did specific things of doing your own thing. Like very helpful and inspiring. So thank you for doing all that.
Yeah.
So I want to give a little thank you to the people who said, hey, your audio isn't showing up in the iTunes stuff. The last 2 episodes, it took me a while to get the audio versions out just because life, #busyness. And so Craig Garrett, Edmund Dugan, Wu Ever, and Raymond Van de Kamp were, and there's a couple of other theirs that I didn't mention, but thank you for all saying, hey, this is broken, but it's not broken. I'm just slow to get those things out. More on that later. There's a couple of call for papers that are out right now. PHP Tech actually the call for papers are that close. I'm sorry. The PHP Tech is where I'm giving a talk. I'm talking about the debugging and it's and also writing tests for PHP source. Those are 2 talks that I'm really excited to give. They're brand new talks. I'll be giving those at PHP Tech. That's May 24th through 26th in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you're there for PHP Tech, stick around for that weekend. There's the USA Grand Nationals, which is a swing and shag event I'm super excited about. So you can come and dance with me. It'll be a lot of fun. But the open CSPs that I was talking about, so if you want to get to speaking, there's 4 that are open. There's actually probably more than that, but the 4 that I know of right now: Pacific Northwest PHP, which is September 7th through the 9th in Seattle, Washington. The CFP closes May 15th. Madison PHP, which is September 22nd to the 23rd in Wisconsin. The CFP closes actually on Sunday, on April 30th, so get to submitting to that one. PHP Northwest, September 29th through October 1st in Manchester, UK, closes May 21st. And finally, Vancouver is having a little shindig, Confu. And Confu is not just PHP, but a bunch of different things. You can submit to that one until May 8th. That one is running December 4th through the 6th in Vancouver, Canada. All right, so the big announcement I'll be making in the audio-only version, and then there's super big announcement will happen in a couple episodes from now. Hopefully, we'll see how many episodes it takes. It might take longer. I don't know. This is what we're kind of waiting on, quite a few cogs to get moving. As we wrap this thing out, we have the developer shout out, which is a segment that recognizes developers for being awesome in the community. And the sponsor for this, 100% of this money goes directly to the developer. I don't take any cut of this, but Zen Training is professional training for PHP developers. You can find out more at zentraining.com. I'm sorry, zen.com/training. Scratch that. Let's just sketch that out. Zen.com/training. Now, they are providing a $50 Amazon gift card to Marcel Potman. Is that right? Marcel Potman? Did I say that right?
No, he's Marcel Cute, and the package he created is called Potman.
Oh, right. Okay, very good. Now I got that confused.
Marcel Potman. It's your new last name, Marcel.
Yes, so Marcel, he was the one who chimed in earlier about the headers for PHP 6.
Yes.
But he also happens to be the developer shout out. So why did we nominate him as our developer shout out for this episode?
Well, he actually created a lot of useful packages for the Laravel community. Like one of them, one of the huge contributions that he did is that he built a Postman. It is a package where you can a PHP library, the task of developing chatbots for like multiple messaging platforms like Facebook and Slack and Telegram. And he's been like dedicating a lot of time and effort on this package, and it turned out very, very useful. So I really nominate him for this.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Marcel, for your contribution to the community. I'll be reaching out to you to get this $50 Amazon gift card into your hand and a handwritten thank you note in my terrible handwriting and a PHP Roundtable sticker that's as giant as your face. So without further ado, I think we should wrap this up with some shameless plugs. So I'll just go in the order I can see you. Adam, do you have anything you would like to shamelessly promote?
If you're interested in learning test-driven development in Laravel, I'm still plugging away at churning out new content for my test-driven Laravel course. So you can learn more about that at testdrivenlaravel.com. And I also put out a new episode of the Full Stack Radio podcast today. So if you're interested in listening to me and David Hemphill talk about the apps that we're working on, that's a pretty fun place to check that out.
I feel like Adam's course changed my life, to be honest.
Nice. That's awesome. What about you, Dries? Do you have anything that you want to promote?
Yeah, I'm working on a project called Pilot. You know that Laravel, it's much more than a framework. It's an entire ecosystem of awesome things. You have Forge for instance provisioning, you have Envoy for deployment, and a lot of other cool stuff. And I was kind of looking at the gaps that the ecosystem still has. And I think Pilot fills in a pretty big gap in terms of QA testing, like testing your actual application in a production-like environment. So I'm working on a little side project on that, which can be I can't really tell too much about the details, but I'm hoping to provide a little bit more details in a couple of months or something. If you want to be notified about that, just go to qapilot.com and subscribe for the newsletter.
Awesome. What about you, Jeffrey? You have anything you want to promote?
I want to promote my business. Check out laracast.com. If you want to hear me in audio form, you can go to laracast.audio. It's kind of like a shorter podcast where I have opinions and I act annoying. And of course, let's be friends on Twitter, Jeffrey_Way. Come say hi.
Yes. What about you, Mohamed? Do you have anything you want to promote?
No, I'm not promoting a product, but like every time like I speak to someone, I try to promote the idea to encourage people to look into the source code of Laravel, like not just use it, but look into the source code. You learn a lot. Like it's very well written and it's easy to understand. So just enjoy.
Perfect. And finally, Tay, what do you have to promote?
Gosh, I don't know. If you need PHP servers, I guess check out Laravel Forge at forge.laravel.com. If you need deployment, check out envoyer.io. Yeah, send me any feedback on Laravel if you try it out, and hopefully we can improve it and keep making it better together.
If you want to come to Laracon, too bad. There's no tickets. Buy them earlier next year.
Yeah, I would normally plug that this time of year, but we are pretty full this year.
Holy moly. That's Laracon US, right?
Yeah, Laracon in New York City, and then Laracon EU still has tickets available though, so we should plug that in Amsterdam, and it's always a really like high quality conference. They pretty much get better venues than I do. They're like really good at putting on a good conference. So check that out if you're in that area of the world.
Big shout out to Sean and Jeroen as well for organizing it.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. I hope you'll join us for some future episodes kind of on the dock right now. PHP 7 internals deep dive. We're going to jump right into the engine. It's not going to be an intro to PHP internals. Like we're going to be like getting deep. So we have quite a few episodes about PHP internals that you can listen to ahead of time, and then we'll go real deep into the engine and see what happens in Opcodelandia. And then also we want to talk about Fig 3.0. This is a brand new, the PHP Fig has been completely revamped, largely thanks to Michael Cullum and Larry Garfield. So we're going to have them on and a few other Figgy monsters. Figgy monsters, I don't know if that's the official name for them. I'll be sitting under the fig tree once again to talk about PHP Fig 3.0 and also a couple of other kind of really cool episodes coming up, maybe about concurrency generators and coroutines, oh my, and talking about imposter syndrome and all kinds of things. So hopefully you'll join us in the next episode, and we'll see you folks in the next episode.
Cool.
Bye.
See ya.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.